Turning to a different topic for the moment, one that my colleague from Louisiana is also here to join me, and I appreciate him being here. I come to the floor today in addition to have spoken about the COVID-19 international legislation to seek unanimous consent on H.R. 5084, the Improving Corporate Governance Through Diversity Act of 2019. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation aimed at increasing transparency in America's corporate boardrooms and ultimately lead to greater diversity in the upper tiers of America's companies. We know that corporate America has a diversity problem. Boards and executive offices across the United States do not look like the customers they serve. Multiple studies, including my own, have demonstrated this hard fact. Since 2010, I have conducted 4 surveys focused on the Fortune 100 companies looking into this problem. They have very big response rates, for which I am grateful to the companies who have participated. My latest survey revealed that since 2010, women and people of color have only made marginal gains in representations on corporate boards. For example, in 2018, women held only 25% of corporate board seats on Fortune 100 companies, despite making up over half of the entire United States population. They were only 25% of corporate board seats, and only 5.8% of that 25% were women of color. And while men make up 75% of Fortune 100 corporate board seats, only 13.7% of those are men of color. If we wanted to take a broader look, the picture's even bleaker. Latinos and Latinas make up nearly 20% of the United States population, yet they held only 2.7% of corporate board seats in Fortune 100 companies. I could go on, but I think I've made the point. I was originally hopeful that the Securities and Exchange Commission would help address this problem through its 2009 diversity disclosure rule. But the 2009 rule failed to even define diversity and gives companies far too much discretion on what they report. That's why I introduced a bill last year with Representative Meeks to improve the SEC rule. The bill does 3 main things. 1, it requires public companies to disclose specific information related to the racial, gender, ethnic makeup, and veteran status of corporate boards and senior management. Simple disclosure. 2, it requires public companies to disclose whether they have policies in place to promote diversity in their leadership. And 3, it requires the SEC to establish a diversity advisory group composed of government, academic, and private sector representatives to study strategies for increasing gender, racial, and ethnic diversity in corporate America. Excuse me. Now, let me be clear. The bill does not force companies to be more diverse, but it does require them to be more transparent about their numbers and their practices. That's valuable information that the public and potential investors should have when deciding where to put their money. The House passed this bill on a bipartisan vote in November, and it enjoys bipartisan support here in the Senate. It's supported by a fantastic coalition that includes the NAACP, the National Urban League, the Latino Corporate Directors Association, and the United States Chamber of Commerce. Corporate diversity is not just morally right. Corporate diversity makes financial sense. McKinsey and Company, their studies have consistently found that greater diversity on executive teams has led to greater profitability. The need for increased corporate diversity is not an act of benevolence. It is a necessity for businesses looking to compete in a diverse 21st century economy. So before I proceed to my unanimous consent request, I'd like to yield to Senator Kennedy for some remarks he has on this issue, and then I'll proceed to that consent request.